Andrew Robinson has now had his coffee and he's ready. Come on in, Andrew.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you for the warm reception. I'm amazed there's many of us here this morning. I thought after all the partying last night, and of course all the people going to church and didn't party, not this crowd, huh? Anyway, but I figured, what the hell? We'll have our own revival service this morning. We'll get down, raise the Holy Spirit and such. Yesterday I started talking about, and for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I'm going to go off kind of on another tack, but it's the same territory, because it's the territory that I like covering it. That gives me a lot of pleasure. Because I'm one of those fortunate people in life, and I'm very grateful for the fact that I'm doing something that I'm very happy about doing. I love acting. I love my job. And even in the lean and mean times, which God knows there have been plenty of those, there was one time when I thought maybe I'll do something else. That 4 or 5 years when I quit the business, but do something else to make a living, but never stop being an actor, never stop being involved with making theater, because making theater is what I consider my livelihood and what sustains me. And it's as well as being a practical process of making a living, it's also a spiritual process. It really sustains me, it feeds me. Basically, I'm a theater person. I come out of the theater, and that's what I do when I'm not doing Deep Space Nine or other film and television. I constantly go back to the theater. Some people are gym rats. Some people are lab rats. Well, that's a rather... No, I take that one back. Lab rats, if that's something else, which, God, I hope none of us here are that. But anyway, I'm a theater rat. And I like spending my time in dirty old dusty rehearsal halls trying to figure out gnarly problems about how do you make this scene happen, what's this character about, and so forth. So my whole tack with these talks, as I said, as I've mentioned before, as I mention all the time, is that I'm not an expert on or an authority on anything. I can't tell you about brain surgery or nuclear physics or I can't tell you how to, bang a 16-penny nail into a side of a house, as I've mentioned. But I can talk about this. This is what I do know. I know it very well. I know it about as well as anybody else I see who's working in the profession these days. And one of the things that, the thing I want to talk about, today is this idea of masks. And actors work with masks. That's our stock in trade. Shoemakers work with shoes. Car mechanics work with cars. Actors work with masks. But that's not as esoteric and as highfalutin sounding as it may sound. Because basically we all have masks. That's who we are. You got a face, you got a mask. And it's just the way the face works. Because, very early on, the muscles in our face get set in certain ways. When certain things happen to us. When we're happy, we're happy. We express that happiness in a certain way. When we're sad, we express that sadness in a certain way. And so forth. The range of emotions that we have. And the older we get, the more set those masks. Okay, she can talk. I don't blame her. Listen, if you had this, this old guy in front of you talking about masks, I'd be talking to myself too. What's going on here? And the older we get, the more set those masks become. And good actors know that. And isn't it ironic that 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, Well, I guess it's just about exactly 5 years ago, because we start the third episode of Deep Space Nine tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. And in the back of my head is always the thing, 5 o'clock, you gotta be there. 5 o'clock, you gotta be in that negative here. You better be ready, baby. They're gonna start slapping that crap on your face. You better be there. Show up. Exactly 5 years ago, it's kind of ironic that I got hired to do this guy who wears a physical mask, an actual mask. And another country heard from. I'm telling you, it's a tough audience. You're a tough audience. And I'd worked with masks before when I quit the business for those 4 or 5 years, and then voila, you've got a mask that approximates the kid's face, and they loved it. They loved the mask making process. But then when we got into working with them, so we got them into a room and a rehearsal room, and they all put on their masks, and they said, okay, nobody can talk, and all you're going to do is that you're just going to look at each other. Just look at each other with these masks on. And it was amazing. It was amazing. It was like, well, it wasn't like, they were seeing each other for the first time. Because you see, with a mask, and this is true with Garrick, the eyes, the only thing that's recognizable, except obviously when I speak, because I have a distinctive speaking voice, the only thing that's recognizable are the eyes. And then, but when you just take the eyes and obliterate the rest of the face, or not obliterate it, but mask it, and the eyes are the main medium of communication, you really see somebody. You really do see something, because the eyes are the one part of our body that really don't age. Everything around the eyes age, but not the eyes. So when you look into those eyes, you're really, because we get distracted by the mustache, or the nose, or the sideburns, or, the hairline, and so forth. But with a mask, you don't get distracted, and you really start looking, and you really start seeing what is communicated through those eyes. And the great actors, the really good actors know this. The really good actors, you can look into their eyes and you can see what's going on, because there's somebody home. The lights are on and somebody is home. And there is stuff that's being communicated. And the kids understood this. They were working with each other, and it was fabulous. And it taught me a lesson, a major lesson. As a matter of fact, it got me back into the business. Because after working with the kids like this and seeing what they were able to do with these masks, and then obviously we went on and did other exercises, and then we took the masks off, and we did plays using masks and without and no masks and so forth. But basically that exercise just sort of jump-started the whole process, and we got some great theater done with those kids, to the point where I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I left the business because I was in these really lousy, and you probably like these. I'm not putting the series down, but it was my experience, because it's very personal. I'm not putting anybody down from here. This is not what I do. But I had terrible experiences just before I quit with a couple of shows called The Dukes of Hazzard and The A-Team. And they're nice people and so forth, but the stuff that I was doing was really strictly, it was like, I don't know, taking out buying a really good car and taking the engine out and putting something, I'm not a car person either, obviously. If I try to make my living doing, although I find myself in Los Angeles driving cars constantly, and I hate it. But anyway, so I came back into the business because I began to see the truth and the strength of what real acting is about. And then I started thinking about all the characters that I played. And every character I've ever played has a mask. And it's not surprising that, for instance, after I did Dirty Harry, the Scorpio Killer, that people for years, and even now, even now, I mean, like that was like 25 years ago. I mean, it's a lifetime ago as far as it's 2 or 3 lifetimes as far as I'm concerned. People still come up to me and like say, boy, you scared me. And I can tell from the way they're seeing it that I still scare them. I mean, there's still a little, voice in their head saying, look out, that sucker might pull a gun on you or bite you on the ear, Evander Holyfield. I mean, that's the power of the bloody mask. That's the power of it. And especially when you get it on a big screen like that. And there is this huge thing coming down at you. See, that's the thing we forget about, because we watch a lot of television, all of us, because listen, we buy videos, you don't have to hassle with somebody throwing popcorn down your neck in the movie theater and, saying, would you please be quiet? I mean, you can get up, go to the fridge for a beer. I mean, go to the beer keg. If that's it, that's kind of house you have. I mean, but we forget about the big screen and how powerful that really is. And in a sense, television is safer, because you can control it. You can control it. I don't like this. Goodbye. Bam. I don't like this. And you can vote with your feet, and take a hike. But in the movie theater, you really have to make that. If you're involved with something you don't like, you have to make a special effort. I rarely have walked out of a movie theater. I've sat through some of the worst dogs in the history of film, because I paid $7.50 for this sucker, and I'm going to stay to the end, and it's awful. You really feel like you're. But on the other hand, if you're watching something that's really good film, I mean, there's no substitute than watching it on that big screen. So, because Dirty Harry, which was my first film ever, and that was on a big screen, the powers that be decided that the mask of the Scorpio Killer, that was who I was. That somehow, he's an actor, but he's really a psychopathic killer. And I'm not kidding. That's no exaggeration. He's an actor, but he's really a psychopathic killer, is basically the perception of the industry. Now, they will deny this. They will say, don't be silly. We're college-educated people. They've got a diploma to prove it, but I guess anyway. That was and we know the difference between and Shinola, as my grandfather used to say. And I said, yeah, but the truth is, you really think I'm a killer, which is why you don't want me playing the romantic lead and that blah 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 blah. But I'm not the only one this happens. This happens to everyone because that's the nature of the business. But it's also the power of the mask. So I really can't blame anybody. There's no blame to be attributed here. I mean, it's like I was a very innocent young actor who didn't understand the power of the medium. But when I came back from this place Idlewild, where, I learned this with the kids, I approached my work completely differently and started understanding that you have to trust that I am not the character. For instance, I am not Garrick. I am not Garrick. Now, there are going to be some of you here who may be surprised to hear that, but it's true. And because I walked through, my life so much, and with people relating to me as the last character they've seen me. There's this one woman yesterday who came up to me and she said, you want to know something? When I saw Liberace, I didn't know it was you. I thought it was Liberace. And I told her that was probably the greatest compliments, I have ever gotten. But yet, at least the woman finally distinguished the fact that I'm not Liberace. Didn't Leonard Nimoy, I am not Spock, but didn't he come back and say, I am Spock? Well, but that's true too, because without me, Garrick is just words on a page. And are we gonna sit down in our living rooms and somebody's gonna prop up prop up a script of Deep Space Nine on the table, and they're going to film it. And they say, okay, now, Act 1, Quark's Bar. And you're going to like look at these pages turning with somebody narrating the words. No, you want actors there doing it. You want to see old Buckhead himself in his bar, you know? And, you know, and you want to see Mr. Pickle lying to people. So, you know, I got names for all of them, but some of them I can't tell you. I'm sorry. Because it'll get on the internet, and then I'm in deep doo-doo, you know? I'm already in enough trouble. I got a mouth on me, I tell you. And yet, believe me, it's Sunday morning, so I'm being real good. I'm going to be real good this morning. So, it's a funny thing, and it's why a lot of actors kind of get lost. There's some, like for instance, I was doing Dirty Harry. And again, I go back to Dirty Harry because it was my first film. It was work that I'm really proud of. Somebody asked me about, you know, what are my proudest moments as an actor, and that's one of them. Because it was the first time I really, you know, saw myself where I rang the bell. Ringing the bell meaning that I nailed the character. So we had this apartment, this little apartment while we were shooting the film in San Francisco, and Irene and I were sitting down at breakfast, and it was about midway, maybe a little 2/3 of the way through the shooting. And she looked at my face and she said, I can't stand this. And I said, what? Because I'm just, you know, here eating my oatmeal. I said, what? Do I slurp? I mean, is this the problem? She says, I can't stand the way your face is looking. And I said, what do you mean the way my face is looking? And she said, it's all twisted. I said, what are you talking about? You know, I went to the mirror and I said, my face looks like the way it always looks. It's me. She says, no, your face it's different. And then I thought, oh, that's really weird. And I thought, well, maybe she's pissed at me for something, you know, and she's just... Well, jump cut to the end of the film. And for those of you who've seen the film, we shot it in sequence. Dirty Harry finally catches the Scorpio killer down at the wharf at this quarry. And the killer has this little kid, who, by the way, is our son, Stevie. And that's another story, getting him to be scared. Andy, it's just Andy. It's just, you know, actually, he's my stepson, it's Irene's real son. And it's just Andy. You know, why should I be afraid of Andy? And the director's coming up to me and says, listen, I gave this kid the job. Now, he better be scared. And I said, no. He says, it's up to you. You got to scare him. If you don't scare him, I know I got ways. And I figure, oh, God. So then I sat down to him, and I went up. I did a Dirty Harry with him. I said, Steve, sit down. I got to tell you something. He's looking at me, and his lips start quivering, and I decided that moment's the last time I'm ever going to hire one of my kids for these things. I figured that is it. So I said, all right, you're happy? Look, he's quivering, tears are coming, let's shoot the sucker. So anyway, Dirty Harry catches him, and he's down there, and the kid runs away, and Dirty Harry delivers his famous line, do you feel lucky, punk? And blows the guy into the water. And we were all happy. I did my own stunt because we had 3 cameras. It was enormously complicated. There was a wetsuit underneath my costume. If we didn't get it the first take, then we'd have to like dry me off and redo the whole thing and blah, blah, blah. But we got it in one take. Everybody's happy. Big applause. I climb up the stairs, up the ladder, out of the water. And Irene is there, and she says, your face. And I said, face again. She's going to go on. No, she says, your face is back to what it was. And I still didn't understand until I saw the movie. And those of you, if you ever see this movie again, or if you ever see it for the first time, it's showed on television a lot, if you look at my face in that, because basically, I mean, obviously, this is an older face, but still, it's the same features, you know, and I'm not that heavy, much heavier than I was then. Not much. You see that how the muscularity of my face has twisted things. So everything is irregular. Everything is off-center. It was the mask. And this is the magical part of the process. And this is why I disagree with what I said about what Harrison Ford, who's an actor I respect and a guy I know and have worked with. But I disagree with him on this interview that he recently gave, where he said there's nothing mysterious about acting. There is. There's a deep mystery to acting. I could not have done that with my face consciously. There's no way in God's green earth that I could have manipulated myself. I suppose there is, but I mean, it would have, I would have had chiropractic bills, till kingdom come. This is the thing that I mentioned yesterday. It's, you have this character. You pay your dues in playing this character. You ask all the right questions. Who, what, when, where, why. And the information comes. The information comes from I don't know where, but it comes, and it comes in the strangest ways. And the thing is, it's about faith. It's just having faith that when you ask the right questions as an actor, I'll expand this, I could expand this beyond it, and I suppose on a Sunday morning I'm tempted to, but I won't. But as an actor, you just have to have faith that when you ask the right questions, the right information is going to come. Now, it's not always information that you like. I mean, there's a lot of us, in terms of acting, one of the occupational hazards of acting is vanity. So you want to look pretty. Oh, the camera's on me. Wait a second, dear. I got to put on that lipstick, or I got to, or not guys. Well, yeah, some guys got to put on their lipstick, but guys in their hair. Wait, I got to get my hair here, and the sad thing is that most acting is at that vanity level. And it's nice to look at. There's nothing wrong with looking at beautiful people and well-coiffed people and people who are clean and so forth. You don't want to look at people with twisted, faces, and everything that you see. But life is life, and we're not all walking around like we're off the cover of Vogue or Elle and so forth. And which is one of the things I love about DS9. DS9 is a dark show. It's not as dark as Babylon 5, but in a sense it is. Babylon 5 has a darker tone. It has that background music. It has that tone. But in Deep Space Nine, you think of it, every one of those characters, Odo, Sisko, Quark, all of those characters have a real dark side to them. And that's accurate, because no matter who you are, I don't care. From my point of view, is that as an actor and as a student of human nature, is that that's what we all have. We all have dark sides. And that's one of the reasons I believe that we're here, is to work it out, is to see if our light sides can gain mastery over that dark side, And because there's nobody that doesn't have, for instance, and the reason I say this is not out of some religious, theological thing. It's because I play a lot of heavies. Now, where do you suppose that heavy comes? I know that I'm not capable of murder, except in situations that I don't know about, and I hope I never know about. And it's those situations, it's those as-if situations that when I'm playing a killer, I have to go to that place. I have to go to that place inside me and say, okay, is there a situation in which you would be pushed to the limit, and when you would commit an unspeakable act? And that's the question, okay? I don't know what the answer is, but that's when the information comes. I don't need an explicit voice saying, yes, Andy, there is a situation in which, I don't need that kind of literal kind of thing. But there is information that comes through. The way it does, the way it did with the Scorpio Killer, and the way it did with any other number of heavies that I played. And playing heavies is hard work. It's painful, hard work. It's also fun. Because everybody loves a heavy. Everybody's like watching a car accident. You don't want anybody really to get hurt, but you can't. And you notice how all the traffic slows down in Los Angeles anyway, it does. There's, on the other side of the barrier, if there's a car wreck or something like that, suddenly the side you're going on slows down to a crawl because everybody wants to watch. I have a feeling that's also the attraction for Garrick. Garrick is like a train wreck that's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. It almost happened in that episode of Impact North. But it really hasn't happened yet, and you kind of like watching this guy. I guess that's the only way I can figure out his attraction, because certainly, unless there's a new beauty fad in which people like, Mr. Pickle type, but I don't know. I guess that's the. But it's the mask, the power of the mask that just turned me around with this acting business, and made me realize that the best actors are the ones who really understand that and who tell the truth, And the thing is that you can, people, there are skillful liars. There are people who can be had, one of my kids is the best liar on earth. And it's, so far, they're white lies, and I hope they never graduate beyond that. And I can be had by her. She can have me for breakfast. It's sad, but true. But if you look, but if I'm really looking at her, if I'm really looking in her eyes, I can tell. And it's the same way with a good actor. If you're really looking at that actor's eyes, you can tell too. If anybody wants to jump in with a question, please do, because it's, oh, good, yeah, please. Yeah, great. And please, as I talk, because I talk, but it's not just a one-sided ramble. But one of the things I do like to do is, I really do like to sit down. I'm not one of these guys that comes to a convention and say, okay, here I am, any questions? Because, I got to come here with some stuff. I got to come here with a point of view that you agree, that you disagree with, and that makes for a much more interesting dialogue. All right, ma'am, and the gentleman in the back second.
Well, you sound like you think that Garrick is a bad guy. I don't look at him as a bad guy. I look at him as more of a redeemer.
Yeah, no, I don't mean. I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't mean to give you the impression. He's not a bad guy. He's in that gray area. That's that gray area that you don't know what he is. And I think that is the attraction. You don't know what he is. And you're hoping against hope, as far as I'm concerned, that one day you will find out who he is. And I hope you never do. I hope I never do. I hope the writers never tell me. There's a thing, which I wish I brought here, because this would have been an intimate group, and hopefully someday I will be able to read it for you. But I've written these, and some of you have heard them. I wrote these, I'm just trying to figure out how to say this. There's a tool. Actors have tools. Like a carpenter has his tools in his box. There's a tool that actors have called biography. And you write a biography for a character, and especially for a character where there's no background. And when I got Garrick, there was no background for Garrick, and the writers weren't telling me, because it's all a mystery, right? So I swear to God, I know no more about Garrick on the surface than any of you do. Any of you do. I'm only ahead of you because I'm, the episodes that I've shot that are in the can, so you don't know those episodes yet. But so I started writing a biography for Garrick. And I started writing it in the form of a diary that Garrick kept. And I started from the time he was exiled to what was then known as, it's now known as Terra Nor again, because Guldakat once again is running the station. So, and I've taken his diary from the time he's exiled to Terra Nor up until the time when the Federation takes it over. And I really got into it, and I've read it actually, I've not read it in this country. I've read it in Australia, I've read the diaries in Germany, which is pretty amazing, because the Germans obviously speak German, but they speak English so well, they understand English so well, that I was able to read it, and they got it. And I'm going to start bringing these diaries on a regular basis, and that really does show, the complexity of the man, that indeed he's not just a bad guy. Yes, sir?
Getting back to the acting and mask and stuff, in building the character, Stanislavski tells a story about a student actor who is trying to develop a character, and he puts on some heavy makeup, and then he doesn't like it. He grabs the cold cream and smears it over his face, and all of a sudden Gary and Liberace, and you told us something about Scorpio. The Asian in Puppet Masters. What has been released in you in those different?
It's a great question, and that is a wonderful example, that Stanislavski thing, because, and it's a good example how a young actor figures, you know, it's like kids in makeup. You stand in front of the mirror and you put your lipstick on, you know, and the eyebrows and stuff like that, and you become another person, and that's great because it's in your fantasy. But it becomes different when you're standing in front of people. And it's more than a fantasy, it's real. It's very real. When you walk out on stage for the first time, you realize, and you get those sewing machine knees, and the stomach feels like it's going to fall out the bottom of your feet. I mean, it's, you know, stage fright, which I still suffer from, is really pretty enormously powerful. I mean, you think you can't function. I'm sure, you know, all of you have been through that, getting in front of people. But anyway, one of the ways you defend it against it, and I'm going to get to this, but it's my, you know, round Red Robin's barn style, you know. Well, one of the ways you try to get by that is that you figure, well, I'll put a lot of makeup on. I'll disguise myself. See, I'm really glad you brought that up. I'll disguise myself, using the mask as a disguise, so they won't find the real Andy, so the real Andy can't be blamed when he sucks, you know? That when he, you know, sucks at the gas pipe of life, you know, and just gives a really bad performance. So, but the thing is, and you look at somebody like that and you're thinking, what the hell is that? Because it's so bizarre. This person heavily made up, sort of like doing these things, and, you know, and it means nothing. And that's what Stanislavski was getting at. He says, you know, there was no internal truth there. And basically, because the paradox about a mask is that you have a mask, but it's you. It's you. That's why I'm not Garrick, but I am. I'm not Spock, but I am. And that's what I think what Leonard meant. You know, and that's the great paradox about acting. I'm not Garrick, but I am. And, you know, but I'm so different from Garrick. But still, I'm able to, like, portray those differences. So there's a part of me, obviously, that really understands it. And what comes out, you know, exactly, what came out in the Dirty Harry, with that Dirty Harry mask? What came out in the Liberace thing, because I've never really played a gay man before. I'm not gay. Although this woman yesterday said that she said something very funny, and you're probably, I don't know if you're hearing that. She said that, you know, when I knew you were coming to this convention, I expected to see an older gay man. Because of the way she perceived Garrick, you know, and made me laugh. But a lot of people, you know, wonder about that, and I love that. I love it. People off balance wondering what the hell is going on here over Bill. I don't know, Homer, but it's weird. But you know, but like with Liberace, what that brought out in me, it brought out my feminine side. Because in order to play a gay man, I really had to go into my feminine side. And that was wonderful. And I came away with such a love of Liberace. For instance, Liberace was genuinely a good man. He was a good man. His one weakness, sadly, was that he had a soft spot for these young guys who took him for a ride. And the last guy, you know, took him for a horrible ride with AIDS. But he was generous to a fault. There's a story about him. I don't know if any of you have seen that Liberace, but Liberace used to do a routine where he'd make an entrance where he'd fly in one of his outfits. And it would be, you know, incredible, you know, glitzy Las Vegas, very effective entrance. So, and in the film that we did, we decided that we were going to do that. And so the guy who did the rigging told me the story. He said, once I was a young man, and I was working in Las Vegas, and I was working for this Irish guy who ran the rigging. He was an old guy who ran the rigging for the flying acts. A lot of those in Vegas, obviously. I don't know if they have them in Branson. A lot of flying acts in Vegas. Anyway, so he said that the Irish guy, you know, like took a coffee break at a crucial time, and so he had to do the rigging because Liberace wanted to work out this routine. And so, of course, Liberace got out and started saying, okay, up and away, let's go. And instead of going up, he was dragged across the length of the stage. And you know those Las Vegas stages are huge. I mean, dragged him all the way across, splinters up the butt, the whole thing. The guy figured this is the end of his career, if not his life. So he's standing, and Liberace he was built like a moose. I mean, he was a powerful man. And because like his clothes, I mean, they had taken all his clothes for me to fit into them. And he stood there, and Liberace came over to him, and he said, "Well, I hope this isn't going to happen again, is it?" And the guy said, "No, sir, I promise you it won't." And he said, "Thank you very much." And just left, and that was it. It never did happen again. You know, but I mean, but thank you for that question, because every one of those masks, every one of those roles brings out. You know, that's why I said yesterday there are no accidents. There are no accidents in terms of the roles that I get a chance to play. Yes, sir.
Which two episodes of Deep Space Nine with you as Garrick stand out in your mind, and why?
Well, why do you say two? That's interesting.
Well, because someone here is going to ask, what's your favorite Garrick episode?
Okay, thanks. Yeah. You also asked that great question yesterday. Yeah. Well, okay. To get that question out of the way, the favorite, but it's also my particular favorite too, but not by a lot, because I got a couple others. But the one with the wire, where Garrick has this contraption in his head that the Obsidian Order puts in the brains of their operatives, so that if they are ever tortured and are in danger of giving up vital information, they just activate this contraption and it releases endorphins into the brain. So instead of pain, they feel pleasure. It's the ideal sadomasochistic toy. I'm thinking of marketing it and selling it at various stores. But basically, it's a story about addiction. And I come from a family that's rife with addiction, mainly alcoholism. And so addiction is an issue that's very near and dear to me. And it's a story about how, in the end, addiction is a person's private, it's a self-diagnosis, and it's also a person's responsibility to do something about it. Nobody else can help, but a little compassion around you, as evinced by Dr. Bashir, can help and go a long way towards a cure. And I found it to be an incredibly sensitive and I think healing episode. And also some of the best acting I personally have ever done. I mean, it's quite amazing. That's when I saw that episode, that's when I really had that thought that, my God, if somebody told me that, I mean, even 5 years, 3 years before this, that I would be capable of doing this kind of acting with wearing a rubber face, in outer space, please, I never would have believed that. And that was written by a guy, Robert Hewitt Wolfe, who's sadly no longer with the show. He's gone on and he's writing films and so forth. A very talented young man, a writer. The other was the thing, that two-parter with Odo. I never remember the names. The Wire is an easy name to remember, but they get so fancy with their names sometimes. Where Odo and Garrick go off looking for Anabran Tain, and they find Tain, and now Tain wants Odo to give him information, and Garrick is now assigned to torture Odo. And therefore, Garrick is dying to get back to, and Garrick knows that Tain's his father. Of course, I didn't know at the time, although I had a suspicion that was the case. And so he wants to get back into Tain's good graces, because obviously something happened between them, which resulted in Garrick being exiled to Deep Space Nine, to Terre Nord. And he wants to get back in the obsidian order and the good graces of that whole situation. So he agrees to torture Odo. And the conflict that the character experiences between what he wants as opposed to what he knows is morally right. And it was the lesson that Garrick took away from that. That he, in the end, when he saw how much pain he was inflicting on a person that he deeply admired and respected, and therefore made a choice to defy Cain and to not torture Odo. It's the same thing, and that's what I love about the character and how they set up the character, because it's the same dynamic that's at work with Garrick's relationship to Dr. Bashir. Because as I've mentioned before, and I hope they continue to explore this, because they kind of stopped after our man Bashir. But it's Garrick's not a human being. Garrick is a Cardassian. Now, whatever a Cardassian may be, the choice I've made is that Garrick works from what, in human terms, we would call our reptilian brain. Remember, we have 3 brains. The oldest brain is what we call our reptilian brain. It's the one back here. That's the one, then they call it reptilian brains because one behaves like a reptile. You circumscribe your boundaries like a rattlesnake does, and that's it. You don't cross that boundary. If you cross that boundary, the rattlesnake attacks you. And obviously there are a lot of people in this world who are working from their reptilian brain. And basically, when you think of what we did politically in the 19th and the 20th century in terms of the way we established boundaries, and especially the way the European powers went into Africa and just arbitrarily said, okay, this is the boundary for that country, this is the boundary for that country, not taking into any consideration for the tribal boundaries and so forth, and why these people now are in these raging tribal conflicts and murdering each other. It's all about the reptilian brain and people who are acting from that. And Bosnia and Serbia, the whole thing. So basically that's what I decided what a Cardassian is. And once I get my orders, being a good soldier, that's it. I do not break the orders regardless of what they may order me to do. Torture your best friend. Murder your mother. Okay, in the name of whatever ideal I'm working from, okay, I'll do it. And that's what Garrick is learning, that is not cool, and that maybe there is another way of living a life. That's what he's learning from Bashir. That kind of compassion, that kind of empathy that Bashir showed in The Wire. And you see, it's serious stuff. I don't mean to bring the party down here, but basically, this is what I love the most about Star Trek and about Deep Space Nine. They can get into some serious stuff. Of course, the action stuff, the drunken Klingons, like the Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff. That's fun. That's fun, and all the shoot 'em up stuff, I go along with that. That's okay. But the stake for me is what's going on underneath the stories. Because in the end, it's about stories, isn't it? It's going back to those old caves when we were a very young human race, and we'd sit in this cave around a fire. And it was scary out there because there were these huge animals, and we didn't have the phasers and the technology to go out and shoot mastodons and so forth. And we had to survive somehow. And one of the ways we survived is that we sat around fires and we told stories. And then one guy would stand up and he'd put an animal skin around his thing, and he'd put on perhaps some kind of mask. Something certainly with claws and the nose and the beak. And he would act out something. And in the acting out, he'd act out maybe a hunt in which the hunt was successful and nobody was killed. And people would see that and they would become encouraged and have hope. And this is where I trace my roots back to. This is what I think that we as actors are still involved with. I'm not involved with, like somebody says, well, why don't you get Rogaine, put some Rogaine in here, Robinson, you get involved and so forth. And I thought, well, yeah, so I went down to the Price Club because they got a sale on Rogaine, and I looked around the Rogaine counter. Yeah, $60, I can get a 3-month supply. I thought, well, okay. So I get a little more hair up here, and then what? I'm going to look 5 years younger. Instead of being 55, I'm going to look like I'm 50 years old. And I thought, well, okay, well, what's the point? And I thought, oh, I'm just pissing away $50. It's $60 as far as I'm concerned. I don't mind looking 55. I don't mind, my hair going bald up here, and that's not the point, Hey, look, besides, they give me a great wig for Derek. I mean, that's a hell of a wig. Well, if I had hair like that, I'd be on the cover of Mademoiselle, No, really. That's the stories. I mean, I love the stories. I love stories. I love stories when I was a kid. I know my kids loved, my best moments when I was telling them stories. Anyway, please. Somebody asked me about, yes. That's, it's a funny process that, how do I get chosen for the role? What's the process was the question. Because as an actor, I'm sure some of you go through the same thing, especially those of you who are in sales. You do a job, the job ends, and you start all over again. You got to sell yourself again, get another job. And this is what I've been doing ever since, I guess, I started working professionally at 22, 23. And that's what I've been doing. Every year of my life is that I go and I audition. And it's a pain in the neck. It really is. The older I get, the more I hate it. It's, because you start all over again. There are no givens. Well, yes, well, Mr. Robinson, what have you done? Says some kid who's old enough to be my grandson. And I said to one kid, like this, I said, what have you done? What have you done? Anyway, that didn't get me the job, so that's the sad thing. You come up with these smart-mouthed remarks and just end up, watch your language now, watch your language. Anyway, yes, back to the question. So, I originally went up there because I auditioned for them for the role of Odo when they were doing the pilot. And it came down to 3 actors who were left to play Odo. Myself, an actor by the name of Garrett Graham, who plays the other Hugh. You know who I mean? Yeah. And obviously Renee. And I never had a handle on Odo. And when Renee got it, I mean, obviously the best man won in that one because Renee nailed it. He came in with that voice. I would never have thought of coming in for a voice. Renee is so smart. Came in with that voice. Because, if you hear Renee's voice, Renee has kind of like he's like more like a tenor, like I am. Very mellifluous voice. So when they called me back they said, okay, there's another character. They called me back a few weeks later. So there's another character they want you to read for. And I thought, I don't want to go back there. They know who I am. I almost didn't go in for the audition. What's it for? They say it's for Cardassian. I said, oh man, what's a Cardassian? And they said, well, he wears a lot of makeup. And I thought, oh, great. And I almost didn't go in. Irene said, what are you moaning and groaning and bitching for? It's a job. Just go in. I said, all right. So I went in there. And I got the script, and I thought, oh, this is very interestingly written. This is very interesting. And I suddenly got an idea for it, I got an idea of how to play him. I still didn't have a sense of him. As I said yesterday, I didn't know a Cardassian from a meatball, I just had no idea what that was. But I got a sense of the character. And by the time I got to the audition, and the way it works is the person who goes in there, who has a handle on it, is the person who gets the role. Because they're sitting behind the table, and actor after actor after actor troops in and sort of taking blind guesses, because that's what we do. What they're asking for is the impossible. They're asking for a performance of this character that basically they could print and put on film. And how can you get to that point with just, like sitting in your room by yourself, like going over the lines, blah, 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 and you walk in with a script and so forth? It's almost impossible. Sometimes, you hit it. You ring the bell, and only because you have a handle. And I had a handle on this guy. I understood something. I think, him politically. I knew he was really smart. And I love playing really smart people, because really smart people think they know it all. And that gives you a sense of false confidence. You walk into, if you ever go for a job interview, and you're feeling, like ill at ease, just pretend you know it all. Don't pretend to yourself. Don't tell the other person, because the other person, you know what happens in that sense. But just walk in and just figure, well, I got this under control. I know it all. Sure, yeah, I can do that. Yeah? Do you know how to ride a horse, Mr. Robinson? I said, well, no. My favorite one, my favorite story in this one was they remember that old Chip series, and Eric Estrada got hurt in a accident, some kind of accident, and so they wanted somebody to replace Eric Estrada for a few episodes. And so they called me up, the agent called me up, and they said, can you go over your Chips, want to know, can you ride a motorcycle? I said, oh yeah, I can ride a motorcycle. I've never done a motorcycle in my life. The things scare the hell out of me, So I said, yeah. I said, okay, so you got the job. Right, you report to work Monday, okay, fine. So, this is Friday, so I call up my friend Jay Lindvig, and I say, Jay, because he's the only friend I know who's got a motorcycle. I said, Jay, I got to learn how to ride a motorcycle. Can you teach me how to ride a motorcycle? Oh, yeah, come on. So, went down to this big vacant lot over near the Universal Amphitheater on the weekends, no cars in there. So he's got this 250, Honda, and I thought, oh, this is great. This is like a bike. I'm zipping around, the lot and say, yeah, I got this knock. I'm fine. Show up at work. They bring out this horse. This 1,000cc Kawasaki. That's top heavy. I can barely hold it up. You know how to. Oh, yeah, sure I do. So, are you okay? Oh, yeah, fine. Just, fine. Okay. The kickstand. Are you sure? Yeah, fine. Okay. Get on it. I'm on it, and it's like I'm on a tank. I can't believe this thing. It's like this. I can't believe I did this too. I never even told Irene. So I actually did, I should have just said, I'm sorry guys, I lied, and bring the stuntman, fire me, whatever you want to do, but bring in the stuntman. Because once you get the job, basically they're going to get really pissed off at you, and then they put in the stuntman, and then they forget about it, and everything's okay. But you got the job. It's not terribly moral, but it's survival. And when you got to pay the rent that month, you do what you have to do. But no, not me. Old Honorable Robinson. I start the thing up, and I start to ride it. About 100 yards down the road, I'm out of control. I don't know how to stop it. This thing, I am freaked out, and I bail. I just make sure that I know which side I'm bailing so I can get that leg out of the way. I bail and, whoa! Scratch your bike. I'm sorry, sir. That's when they were really even more pissed at me than they would have been if I just said I can't ride this thing. Because now it was all scratched up. But it worked out okay. The life of an actor, I'm telling you, it's so strange. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, with that man first and then you, ma'am.
Which?
Yeah, you with the pretty shirt.
Thank you. You said yesterday that your character is also built up and on a wetsuit.
Yeah.
And wetsuits are kind of constricted. How do you find the ability to move around?
No, you see, that's part of the physicality. If you notice with Garrett, and sort of like like an old Prussian military person. But the reason for that is I can't lift my arm higher than this. And plus I've got padding on, the whole thing. So it's actually kind of like, I'm sorry they came out with the Garrett Action Doll, because basically I used to do my Garrett Action Doll imitation. And now that they've got the real one, my imitation pales. But basically, it is the Garrett Action Doll. Yes, you have a question.
You were talking earlier that you, in one of your characters, you came out with being able to touch your feminine side. From Garrett, what have you discovered about yourself?
Yeah, from Garrett, what have I discovered for myself? That's the question that you asked yesterday. Yeah, and I'm glad you asked it again, because yesterday was the first time I really addressed it. What I've gotten from Garrett is, I mentioned yesterday that, well, I mentioned today about his super smartness and his confidence. Irene mentioned this morning, she said, think of this guy. This is a guy who's in exile. He's not only in exile, he's living in a place where the people who live there hate him. They hate him because he was part of the oppressor. I've made this likened before, but it's like, say, a member of, not even the Nazi party in World War II, just say a German soldier in the Wehrmacht who decides to live in Israel. That's what it's like for Garrett to be living on Deep Space Nine. So, and plus the fact, remember in The Wire, the gravity field is too heavy for him. He feels twice his weight because the gravity setting the Cardassians was was much lighter because of their on homeland. So all these things, and yet the guy functions. But he not only functions, he functions with seemingly supreme confidence in the face of it all. And with this attitude that things are just fine. And isn't this a pleasant way to spend the day? Yes, I'm a tailor. It's humiliating for him to be a tailor. This man was a high-class operative in a very sophisticated Secret Service outfit. And now he's sewing up people's pants and hemming their dresses. But it's all fine. Yes, please, bring your clothes to me. Of course I'll fix them. That's what I've learned from him. There's a certain, even in the worst of it, you have your spine. You've got your spine. You don't have to bow down to the gravity because it's too heavy of the pressure. You keep the spine straight, and you look each people in the eye, and not with meanness or anger, but you're pleasant. Isn't this a wonderful day? Yes, I'm losing my house, but I'm still alive. I've got the clothes on my back. I've been kicked out of my homeland. And that's basically what I've learned from it. There's a certain confidence. There's a certain, even when you're scared, there's a certain, joie de vivre, an élan, a strength that you can have in the face of it. And I gotta tell you, it came at a right time in my life. It came at a good time in my life. That it's a lesson that I really wanted to learn. Thanks for asking that. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I know you're a writer. Why don't you publish the diary?
I am. Well, I'll tell you why I can't publish the diaries themselves, because I get into trouble with those people who do the licensing stuff at Paramount, and they have a whole room of people who just, wait for people like me to sue. And I don't want to be sued by those people, I want to have nothing to do with them. So, but what I am doing is I'm writing about this idea about the masks. And obviously there's going to be a lot about Garrett in it. And if I can incorporate those diaries into as an example of how one creates masks, then I probably will try to do that, because I think I love these diaries. But basically, I think what I'm going to do for the time being now is and I think I made this decision today while I was up here just now. I think I'm just going to bring these diaries now to conventions when I come, and the way I did in Australia and Germany, and just, read sections of them, and that's what I'll do.
All right, the second part. I've seen you do some pretty athletic things. You have white teams, and you're on the floor and rolling around. Are you still in that wetsuit when you do that?
Yeah, and that actually works to my advantage, though, because it's padding. I'm like a Michelin man, I hit the floor and I bounce back up. And that's kind of Garrett. Garrett sort of hits the floor. He's like a shmoo. Remember those shmoos we had as kids? Hits the floor and he bounces back up with a smile on his face. I love that about the guy. You can't keep him down. You can't keep him down. Put things in his brains, and nothing does. Yeah, somebody else. Yes, ma'am.
Granted, you don't have a lot of spare time, but what do you read when you have time to read?
I read a lot. Irene is the reader. As a matter of fact, she's got me a little ticked off because I can't see the alarm clock. I can't see the radio alarm anymore because her books now have obliterated it. So when I wake up in the morning, I can't see what time it is. I wish you'd do something about that, Irene. Yeah, okay, I'll put the radio on my side. Good, all right. But I love history. I love history, and fiction too. I read a lot of novels. Reading is it's a solace. It's the one thing that gives me the most pleasure, in terms of a hobby. Just the idea of having a really nice chair and a good lamp. And that's my idea of a good time. I'm afraid that's why you didn't see me into parties last night. I'm afraid I'm a little boring. Yes, sir.
You made a good statement.
Sorry about that.
You made statements about the strengths of Gary, but in one episode where he is in the Girardeau prison, maybe I'm misreading it, but there was a tremendous reaching out to his father, a terrible longing for approval. And I'm wondering if we're not seeing a great sensitive inner side that may give rise to greater things for Garrett in the future.
Oh, I agree with you. I think the man is incredibly sensitive. He really is. And you see, he's a product of his environment, like, most of us to one degree or another are. He's an enormously sensitive man, I think. And certainly the feelings that he had for his father, were very deep, and the rejection, how he suffered from that rejection from his father. I just hope, though, and this is my hope, I hope that, having said all that, and I agree with you, I just hope that they do not ever sentimentalize him, because he's a dangerous man. His conditioning, the way he's been educated, his outlook on life is a very dangerous outlook, because it's basically an amoral outlook. He has his allegiances, and he has learned things from Bashir and Odo, and he's made his connections, but he's still a very dangerous person. And his reptilian brain is still very active. And he's not to be trusted. And as I said before, he is a liar. And therefore he can never, and I don't want to lose that, because that's the dark side. And that's the material, working with that. That's part of the mask. Because even though there is this part of him, it is a mask. It's a mask that's hiding a lot of other stuff. And it's the other stuff that's behind that mask that, for me, makes him really compelling. Did you have a follow-up on that?
No, I understand where you're going.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask you, because that episode showed last night here.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. Your father's name is different from you. I mean, his name is Kane.
I was an illegitimate child. Garrett was an illegitimate child. Hey, Mom? Yeah, I bet you didn't know that, huh?
So is that factual or just?
No, that's part of my opinion. But you see, you remember there was back in one of the earliest episodes, Garrett is at the computer, and remember he's trying to contact Tane, and he gets this Tane's housekeeper secretary. That's his mother. That's Mom, as far as I'm concerned. And I know I'm right about this. I know I'm right about that. You know, I mean, the writers haven't told me this, but I know that that's what happened. And she and Tane, she was always this, you know, like a lot of these great guys, you know, people that would really surprise us had these so-called secretaries. Yeah.
Well, is his name Elam Garrett or Garrett Elam?
Elam Garrett. Elam is his first name. Elam to his closest friends. Yes, back there was a hand that went up. Oh, you're just scratching your head? Okay, that's all right. Yes, sir.
You said that Garrett is a liar. Isn't it more, it's not quite that basic in the fact that everything that he says has truth in it. A perfect
Well
example
put.
is the episode that they're talking about where he goes to find his father, is that he's lying to Worf about wanting to join Starfleet Academy, and he comes out and says to Worf, yes, I'm lying.
Yeah.
Lying is an art form, you have to practice it.
Yeah. Exactly right. And it's really interesting. The people, because we all have friends of ours. Of course, none of us are liars, but we all have friends of ours, you know, or people that we know, not necessarily friends, who are liars, people who can't help it. And if you listen to the lies, it's interesting the choice of lies. You learn almost as much, and you're absolutely right, as much of a truth from the kind of lies that they tell, what they select in their lies, as you would from if they told the truth. But that's absolutely right. Yes, sir.
What is it that you, in the future, would like to do? Are you going to continue to act, or are you going to look for directing, writing?
I'll always act. I mean, how's our time, Bob?
5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll always act. There's no question about it. I mean, I just love it. I'm directing more and more, and because I'm also enjoying that, because I think it's the New England schoolmarm in me that makes me enjoy the directing, because I am able to help people, and I really like that. I'm able to help actors with performance, and at the same time stay out of their way, which is the secret of directing, by the way, is to help somebody and stay out of their way. It's very difficult. It's, you know, those of you who are teachers, I think, you know, kind of understand what I'm talking about. But right now, my daughter Rachel, who played the character Melanie in The Visitor, remember when Cisco is killed in an accident, and Jake is an old man, and there's this young woman who's a writer who comes to him, who wants to be a writer, and that was my daughter Rachel who played that. She's a wonderful actress, but she's also a wonderful writer herself, and she's written a film script about her experiences in a sorority at a Midwestern university. And it's an amazing script. And I've gone into partnership with her on that. And I want to direct it. She's obviously going to play one of the leads, so we're trying to get that off the ground too. But I'll do a lot of theater. I will always do theater. There's no question about it. And I'm pretty clear, and I want to write this book, which I'm in the process of writing right now. So, I mean, basically, those are the things that are interesting me, because now I'm at a time in my life where I have to be very specific about how I want to spend my energy and what I want to do in terms of my projects. When I was 20 years younger, I mean, I was scattershot. I was all over the place, and that wasn't very helpful. But now I pretty much know what I got to do. Yeah.
When you're sitting in constant waiting for your turn to get up in front of the cameras, what is it in the back of your brain that is the dream episode for Garrett? Like you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to do this now, but wouldn't it be cool if? What is that episode?
If Dax fell madly in love with Garrett. Just devoted her life and her Well. Yeah. No, you know, I honestly don't think that way. I said once laughingly, but then I thought that was a great idea. Somebody asked me a similar question like that, and I said, well, it'd be great. He went mad and took over the station and did sort of like a Captain Queeg kind of thing, Mutiny on the Bounty. You know, you know, the writers write so well for him that for most of the time I'm really quite satisfied with what they come up with, because you see, the thing is that one of the important things in my life is accepting one's role. Kind of interesting expression, but in the past I've spent so much of my life thinking my role should be bigger. I should have this, I should have that, I should have this, instead of accepting what I do have and working from there. And I'm now pretty successful in accepting my role. So when I get a script, it's basically that's the role I'm going to play, and I've become really quite happy with it. So because I start thinking that way, and it gets me in trouble. I don't know other people, but it gets me in trouble. I start getting out of myself and ahead of myself. Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned you do a lot of makeup. How long does it take you to get time?
The makeup takes about, depending on who's doing it, it takes 2.5 hours. That's why I have to be in the studio tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, because we start shooting at 7:30. And so Aaron Eisenberg, who plays Nog, and I will be there at 5 o'clock, while everybody else is still sleeping. And that's just the way it is. But we'll get the overtime and they won't. So there. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any role that you haven't had the opportunity to do that you would really like to do?
Is there any role that I would like to do? Yeah, you know, and the funny thing is, it's mainly the classical roles. I find myself, like, there's a lot of Shakespeare and Moliere that I'd like to do. I know that one role, and I've always had a thing about this play for a long time, is King Lear, but I'm too young for that, but someday I will play that. But there's another role, and somebody brought this up. One of the members of my fan club dropped me a note and said, you know, I'd love to see you and your daughter in The Tempest. And I thought, that's a great idea, you know, because there's of course, Prospero is a wonderful role in The Tempest, and then there's Prospero's daughter, Miranda. And I thought, that's a great idea. But there are a bunch of stuff like that. I mean, that's possible. That's a different kind of question than this gentleman's question over here about, like, what would you like, what kind of story would you like for Garrick? And so, because thinking about what I would like to play in terms of roles that already exist, that's possible. That's possible. That's within my realm of possibility. And, you know, for instance, I would love to play a Tartuffe, the Moliere's play. And you know, obviously, I'm a little too old to play Romeo, but it's, you know, not too many people laugh. That's really very kind of you, you know. Oh, yeah, I can see him playing Romeo. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you mentioned Nog and Jake. That is not truly a short person.
A very short person.
Is he an adult or is
Yes, he's an adult. He has 2 children, and he's probably in his late 20s.
And Jake, we watched him go from very short to tall. How tall is he now?
No, he's taller than me. Yes,
He's gone boom. Right?
Oh, it's amazing. He's about 6'3", 6'4" now. Yeah, it's so extraordinary, because he was a shrimp 5 years ago. He was this shrimpy little kid. Now, Mr. Lofton to you. Yeah.
But Nog is a mature adult.
Yeah, and see. There's one more question, then I think we have to wrap this. Yes.
Will you play Garrick for as long as DS9 is on the air?
Yeah, I will. I will. And you know, the thing is, I'm not as battle-weary as the regulars are, because, you know, I only do those handful of shows each year. My Baker's, you know, half dozen or so. I mean, this year I'll probably play a lot more.
Is this next season going to be DS9's last?
You know, I'm operating under the assumption that it will be. It may not. It all depends on how, you know, how how weary the other actors are, and quite frankly, you see, all the regulars are contracted for 6 years. So after their contract is up, they'll go, if the studio says we'd like to do another season, the actors are going to come back and say, we'd like the key to the bank now, please, if you want us to do a 7th season. And it depends on how big a key the studio will give them. Because believe me, every one of those actors is going to ask for a lot of money, and it may not be fiscally, worth their while to do it. So I'm really operating on the assumption that this is the last season.
Has there been talk of a movie?
No, there hasn't been, because they've got 2 more movies that they're contracted to do with Next Generation. So they've got to do those 2 movies first before they even talk. My feeling is what's going to happen is that there's going to be some mixing and matching. Maybe even in the next Generation movie, but certainly the one after that, they'll start mixing and matching some of the DS9 people in it. And if there is still a market for it, if there's still a need for it, then there will be probably a DS9 movie. But but these are things that I'm not taking to the bank. Before we wrap up, I just want to repeat for those of you who haven't heard this before that any of the pictures that you buy from us, and I also have some pictures of Sid and myself in the Garrett Bashir roles. All this goes to charity. The money that we bring in goes to Save the Children. Sid has a couple of charities. His is Amnesty International and Habitat for Animals. So that we split the pictures with the 2 of us down the middle, and he takes that money. And so I wanted to thank you for those of you who bought the pictures yesterday, and if you are buying them today, because they really are. Every penny of it is going to these charities, and obviously we wouldn't be supporting them. Yeah, and Irene, who is the co-chair of the Save the Children program in Los Angeles, would like to say something.
It's not for animals. Habitat is for people. Yeah.
Oh, man, you see, there's a habitat that's also for animals. So, I'm very sorry. Okay, right, I'm sorry. Okay, for the homeless. Okay, great. Listen, you've been terrific. The questions have been outstanding. I mean, this has been, for me, a lot of pleasure. I thank you. I thank you for supporting me, supporting the show, and enabling me, making it possible for me to come here and to do this, because I really enjoy this a lot. God bless you. Thank you.